The first thing Ambassador Cathara noticed was the quiet. For 30 years she had worked at the Galactic Communications Hub on Station Prime. Every day brought the same familiar sounds. The constant hum of subspace transmissions, the chatter of merchant vessels requesting docking permits, and always, the endless stream of human broadcasts, music, news, scientific data, personal messages, entertainment programs. Humans seemed incapable of staying silent for even a moment. Now her communication board showed nothing but empty channels where Earth's signals should be. Cathara ran her six-fingered hand over the controls again, checking each frequency. The human channels that normally blazed with activity showed only static. She called over her assistant, a young Nexari named Blip, whose scales turned blue when he was nervous. Blip, check the human frequencies again. Something must be wrong with our equipment. Blip's scales shifted to a worried blue as he worked. No malfunction, Ambassador. All systems are working perfectly. The humans just stopped talking. Cathara felt a chill run through her tall, thin frame. In all her years of diplomatic service, she had never known humans to be quiet. They were the galaxy's most active communicators, flooding every available channel with their thoughts, ideas, and endless curiosity about everything around them. She pulled up the logs. The last human transmission had come exactly 18 hours ago from Earth's primary communication center. It was brief and strange. Condition Omega. All channels silent. Message ends. That was it. After decades of constant chatter, humanity had gone completely quiet. Within hours, reports began flooding in from across the galaxy. Human colonies that normally broadcast daily updates had gone silent. Human merchant ships still traveled their routes but responded to no hails. Human research stations in distant systems continued their work, but sent no data reports. The Galactic Council called an emergency meeting. Representatives from 47 different species gathered in the Great Hall of Station Prime. The Korvaxi delegation, with their massive frames and scarred battle armor, seemed pleased. General Thokmar's deep voice rumbled with satisfaction. Finally, the noisy primates have learned their place. Perhaps now we can conduct galactic business without their constant interference. Several other species murmured agreement. Humans had a way of pushing into every discussion, offering solutions to problems no one had asked them to solve. They made peace where others preferred profitable conflicts. They shared technology freely when others preferred to hoard advantages. But Ambassador Veltar of the Zephyrian Collective looked worried. Her people had worked closely with humans for decades. This is not normal behavior for them. Something is wrong. Wrong? General Thokmar laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. What could be wrong with silence? The humans have finally realized they are not the center of the galaxy. Dr. Vexnell, the galaxy's leading expert on human behavior, stood slowly. She was old even by her species' long-lived standards, her gray skin marked with the wisdom patterns of advanced age. "You do not understand humans," she said quietly. "I have spent 40 years studying their history, their psychology, their culture. When humans go quiet, it is not submission, it is preparation." The hall erupted in arguments. Some species celebrated what they saw as humanity's withdrawal from galactic affairs. Others worried about the economic impact. Human trade routes carried nearly 30% of all interstellar commerce. Still others feared what might have caused such a dramatic change in human behavior. 3 days passed with no word from any human settlement. The first real sign of trouble came when the Altarian merchant fleet lost contact with the human colony on Kepler 442b. The colony had been humanity's breadbasket, supplying food to a dozen systems. When Altarian ships arrived to collect their regular shipment, they found the colony still operating normally. Humans went about their work, tended their farms, and loaded cargo ships as always. But they would not speak. Not a single word. The Altarian captain tried everything. He spoke in universal standard, in broken English, even in mathematical concepts transmitted through their ship's computers. The humans responded with hand gestures and written notes, conducting business in complete silence before waving the merchant ships away. More reports followed. Human colonies throughout the galaxy continued functioning, but remained absolutely silent. Their ships still traveled between systems but ignored all attempts at communication. Human scientists still published research papers, but only in written form with no voice recordings or video messages. It was as if the entire human species had taken a vow of silence. 2 weeks after the communications blackout began, the Zephyrian Collective made a decision. They would send their fastest diplomatic vessel directly to the Sol system to demand answers. Ambassador Veltar personally led the mission aboard the flagship Harmony's Voice. The ship departed with great ceremony. Representatives from dozens of species gathered to see them off, hoping finally to learn what had caused humanity's strange behavior. The journey to Earth would take 5 days at maximum warp. 5 days came and went. Harmony's Voice never arrived at Earth. More troubling, it never sent any distress signals or status reports during its journey. It had simply vanished. Fear began to replace curiosity in the galactic community. If humans could make a Zephyrian flagship disappear without a trace, what else might they be capable of? The Zephyrians had the best shields and most advanced navigation systems in the galaxy. Their ships were nearly impossible to destroy or capture. Dr. Vexnal requested permission to address the Galactic Council again. This time, the Great Hall was packed. Even species that rarely participated in galactic politics had sent representatives. "I warned you before," the old scientist began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's translation systems. "Human silence is not weakness. It is the calm before the storm." She activated a holographic display showing human historical data. Throughout their history, humans have shown a pattern. When faced with an existential threat, they do not panic or debate. They go quiet, they plan, they prepare, and then they act with a decisiveness that terrifies their enemies. Images flowed across the display. Ancient human battles, world wars, space colonization efforts. In each case, periods of intense human activity were preceded by unusual quiet periods. But what threat could be so great that it would unite all of humanity in silence? Asked Ambassador Cathara. Dr. Vexnal's old eyes were filled with worry, something that scares them. And if something scares humans enough to make them stop talking, then we should all be very afraid. The meeting ended with no resolution. Some council members called for military action against human space to force communication. Others wanted to wait and see what would happen. A few wise voices suggested preparing for the possibility that humanity's silence meant they knew something the rest of the galaxy did not. As representatives returned to their ships and home systems, few noticed the small details that would later seem important. Long-range sensors picked up unusual activity in human space. Massive energy signatures from their industrial worlds, fleet movements in strange patterns, and most curious of all, human ships visiting dead systems that held nothing of apparent value. Ambassador Cathara returned to her communication station, still hoping to pick up some trace of human activity. The channels remained silent, but she noticed something new in the background radiation patterns. It was subtle, almost hidden in the natural cosmic noise, but there seemed to be some kind of organized signal. She tried to decode it but found only meaningless patterns that hurt her head to study. Whatever humans were doing, they were still communicating, just not with the rest of the galaxy. That night, Cathara stood at the observation deck of Station Prime, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, 6 billion humans on Earth and countless millions more on distant colonies were going about their lives in complete silence. For the first time in her long diplomatic career, she felt truly afraid. 6 weeks had passed since Earth fell silent and the galaxy was beginning to crack. Trade routes that had operated smoothly for decades now struggled with delays and confusion. Human merchants still arrived at their scheduled destinations, but conducting business through hand gestures and hastily scrawled notes took 3 times longer than normal voice negotiations. Cargo manifests had to be confirmed through painful sign language sessions that left both sides frustrated and angry. Station Manager Grixnall watched another heated argument unfold in Docking Bay 7. A human captain stood silently while a Korvaxi trader shouted and waved his massive arms, demanding to know why a shipment of medical supplies had been reduced by 20%. The human simply pointed to his written explanation, then to mathematical calculations showing resource allocations. The Korvaxi could not read human writing. The human apparently would not speak to explain. Both species grew more agitated by the minute. "This is madness," Grixnell muttered, his tentacles writhing with stress. "How can we run a civilized galaxy when an entire species refuses to communicate?" Similar scenes played out across thousands of trading stations. The galactic economy, built on rapid communication and quick negotiations, began to slow like a machine losing power. Prices for basic goods started to rise as supply chains became unpredictable. Some human colonies stopped exporting entirely, keeping all their production for themselves. The Hegemony Council met in emergency session after emergency session, but each meeting ended in the same frustrated deadlock. Nobody knew what to do about humans who would not talk. General Thakmar of the Korvaxi paced the council chamber like a caged predator. "They mock us with their silence. They make trade difficult and diplomacy impossible. I say we send warships to their colonies and demand they speak. And if they refuse," asked Ambassador Cathara, "then we make them remember why communication is preferable to conflict." Several species supported the general's aggressive approach. The Korvaxi had always been the galaxy's primary military power, and their patience with human stubbornness was wearing thin. Other warrior species began to murmur agreement. But Dr. Vexnell rose slowly from her seat, her aged frame commanding attention. "You speak of forcing humans to communicate through military action. Have any of you studied what happens when humans perceive a military threat?" She activated her holographic display again, showing images from human history. When the ancient city of Sparta was threatened, they spoke less and trained more. When their island nation of Britain faced invasion, they stopped debating and started building defenses. When their entire planet faced nuclear war, they created deterrent systems so terrible that no one dared attack. "Ancient history," General Thakmar growled. "What relevance does that have now?" "Because humans have not changed," Dr. Vexnall replied. "They are still the species that survived ice ages, plague, and world wars through preparation and silence. If anything threatens them now on a galactic scale, their response will be proportionally greater." The arguments continued for hours, but no decisions were made. The council was paralyzed by uncertainty and growing fear. Meanwhile, strange reports continued to filter in from across human space. Captain Zektor of the Nexari exploration fleet had detected unusual energy readings near the Vega system. When his ships investigated, they found human vessels conducting some kind of mining operation in an asteroid field that contained nothing but worthless rock and ice. The humans ignored all attempts at communication and continued their work until the Nexari ships left. 2 days later, another exploration team found similar operations near Alpha Centauri, and then near Wolf 359, and Epsilon Eridani. Everywhere they looked, humans were mining dead systems with an intensity that made no economic sense. "They are taking everything," reported Captain Zektor to the council. "Not just rare metals or useful materials. They are processing entire asteroids regardless of composition. Our sensors show massive refineries operating at full capacity, producing. We cannot determine what they are producing." Even more disturbing were reports from deep space monitoring stations. Human ships had been detected far beyond the edge of known space, traveling in formations toward regions no other species had ever explored. When other vessels tried to follow, they found nothing but empty space and lingering energy signatures they could not identify. The Altarian Computation Collective, masters of data analysis and probability calculation, attempted to make sense of human behavior patterns. Their massive quantum computers processed every piece of information available about human activities over the past 6 weeks. Their conclusion was deeply unsettling. Prime Calculator. Ythron presented the results to a closed session of council leadership. Based on observed patterns, human activity suggests preparation for a conflict of unprecedented scale. Resource extraction rates indicate they are building something requiring massive amounts of raw materials. Fleet movement patterns suggest defensive positioning around critical systems. Defensive against what? Asked Ambassador Cathara. Unknown. But the scale of preparation suggests a threat we have not yet identified. The most frightening development came from the Psionic Council of Mindrea. These telepathic beings served as the galaxy's early warning system, their collective consciousness able to detect disturbances in space-time from vast distances. For centuries, they had provided advance notice of everything from solar flares to rogue black holes. Elder Mindrea Sithal delivered their report in person, her ethereal form shimmering with barely contained psychic energy. We sense great disturbance in the deep void beyond our galaxy's edge. Something vast approaches, but its nature is shielded from our sight. This shielding, it does not feel natural. You think humans are somehow blocking your telepathic abilities? General Thakmar asked. No. We think something else is blocking us and humans detected it before we did. The implications sent shockwaves through the council. If humans had sensed a threat that even the Psionic Council could not fully perceive, then humanity's silence might not be stubbornness or preparation for aggression against galactic neighbors. It might be preparation for defense against something else entirely. But defense against what? The answer came partially from an unexpected source. Dr. Krill Yan, a young Zephyrian scientist working at the Galactic Research Institute, had been analyzing cosmic background radiation patterns. She noticed subtle changes in deep space energy, signatures that corresponded exactly with the timeline of human silence. Something is disturbing the cosmic background. Radiation at the edge of detectable space. She reported to her superiors. The disturbance is moving, and if I calculate its trajectory correctly, it is heading toward our galaxy. Her findings were immediately classified and reported to the highest levels of galactic government. Emergency meetings were called. Deep space monitoring stations were instructed to focus all sensors on the region Dr. Krill Yan had identified. What they found defied explanation. Long-range sensors detected massive structures moving through the void between galaxies. The structures were enormous, larger than moons, possibly larger than planets. They moved with purpose and intelligence, following trajectories that would bring them into contact with the outer rim of galactic space within 2 years. But most disturbing of all, the structures appeared to be consuming everything in their path. Stars went dark as they approached. Planets vanished from sensor readings. Entire solar systems simply ceased to exist, and they were definitely heading toward the galaxy. The Galactic Council called an emergency session with representatives from every known species. For the first time in galactic history, even the most reclusive civilizations sent delegates. The Great Hall of Station Prime filled beyond capacity as the reality of the situation became clear. They were facing an extinction-level threat. Ambassador Cathura stood at her communication station, staring at the silent human channels. Suddenly, humanity's behavior made terrible sense. They had not withdrawn from galactic society out of arrogance or aggression. They had gone silent because they were preparing for a war that could determine the survival of every living thing in the galaxy. For the first time in 6 weeks, she transmitted a message on all human frequencies. Earth, Sol System, humanity, the galaxy knows of the approaching threat. We need your help. The response came immediately, but not from Earth. A human fleet materialized from dark space at the edge of Station Prime sensor range. Ships unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Sleek, powerful, and radiating energy signatures that made veteran military officers nervous. A single voice cut across all communication channels, speaking in clear universal standard. It was calm, professional, and absolutely terrifying in its certainty. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Human Defense Fleet. We have been monitoring your discussions. The threat is real and it is greater than you imagine. If you want to survive what is coming, you will follow our instructions exactly. There will be no debate, no committee meetings, no diplomatic negotiations. From this moment forward, this galaxy operates under human military authority. The transmission ended, leaving stunned silence in its wake. The humans had not abandoned galactic civilization after all. They had been preparing to save it. The first real glimpse of what humanity had been preparing for came 3 days after Admiral Chen's announcement. Deep space monitoring stations across the galaxy detected the impossible, a fleet of vessels emerging from the void between galaxies. The ships were massive beyond comprehension, each one larger than most space stations. But what made them truly terrifying was not their size, it was their nature. These were not machines. They were alive. Dr. Krillian watched her instruments in horror as the readings came in. The hull materials are organic, she reported to the emergency command center that had been established on Station Prime. They are not built, they are grown. The alien vessels, pulsed with their own internal light, like massive hearts beating in the darkness of space. Their surfaces writhed and shifted, constantly changing shape as if the ships themselves were breathing. Most disturbing of all, they left trails of consumed matter behind them, the remnants of entire star systems that had been processed into biological fuel. Admiral Chen's human fleet took position at the edge of the system, their advanced sensors providing detailed information about the approaching threat. Her voice came over the emergency channels, calm and professional despite the magnitude of what they all faced. "We call them devourers," she said. "Our deep space monitoring detected them 8 months ago. They consume all organic and inorganic matter, converting it into biomass and energy to fuel their expansion. They have already consumed 17 solar systems on their approach to our galaxy." The numbers were staggering. 17 entire star systems. Billions of planets, trillions of living beings, all converted into fuel for the approaching fleet. The scale of destruction was beyond anything the galaxy had ever imagined. "How many ships are we facing?" asked General Thokmar, his usually aggressive demeanor subdued by the enormity of the threat. "Our best estimate is 12,000 vessels in the primary fleet," Admiral Chen replied. "But they are not ships as you understand them. Each one is a living entity capable of reproducing, adapting, and evolving in real time. They learn from every encounter, becoming stronger and more dangerous." The Devourer fleet had entered the outer rim of galactic space, still moving at incredible speed toward the core systems where most galactic civilization was concentrated. At their current rate of advance, they would reach the first inhabited worlds within 6 standard months. Then the Devourers made their first and only attempt at communication. The message came simultaneously on every frequency, in every language, transmitted with such power that it overwhelmed communication systems across the galaxy. But worse than the words was the psychic pressure that accompanied them, a mental weight that sent telepathic species into screaming fits and left even non-telepathic beings with crushing headaches. "We are hunger. We are inevitability. Your resistance will become our sustenance. Your civilizations will feed our growth. Submit. And your dissolution will be swift." The message repeated for 6 hours before stopping, leaving the galaxy in stunned silence. On the Mindrayan homeworld, 12 elder telepaths collapsed into comas from the psychic assault. The Nexari collective's shared consciousness network crashed entirely, leaving billions of individuals suddenly cut off from the group mind that had defined their species for millennia. Even the normally unshakable Korvaxi warriors found themselves fighting waves of primal terror. But humans seemed largely unaffected. "Admiral," Chen's voice returned to the communication channels within minutes of the transmission ending. "The psychic component of their communication is designed to induce fear and submission," she reported clinically. "Human mental defenses appear naturally resistant to this form of attack. We have developed countermeasures for other species." It was the first hint that humanity had been doing more than simply observing the approaching threat. They had been studying it, understanding it, and developing ways to fight it. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session, but the usual lengthy debates were cut short by cold reality. General Thokmar, despite his warrior pride, was the first to acknowledge the truth. "My fleets are strong, but we have no experience with enemies like this. The Korvaxi Empire places itself under human military command. One by one, every major galactic power made the same decision. The Altarian Computation Collective offered their processing power for strategic planning. The Nexari provided their shield technology. The Zephyrian Collective promised their fastest ships for reconnaissance. Even the normally neutral trader guilds pledged their merchant fleets for logistics support. But it was clear that humanity would lead the defense effort. They were the only species that had detected the threat early and prepared for it. Admiral Chen's next briefing revealed the true scope of human preparation. Over the 8 months since detecting the Devourer fleet, humanity had transformed their entire civilization into a war machine. Every colony had been fortified. Every industrial facility had been converted to military production. Every human in space had been trained for combat operations. "We have constructed defensive installations in 47 star systems along the Devourer's projected path," she reported. These are not traditional fortifications. We have had to develop entirely new approaches to warfare. The holographic display showed human defensive positions throughout the galaxy's outer rim, but what shocked the assembled representatives was not the scale of preparation. It was the nature of the weapons being deployed. Humanity had created things that bordered on the impossible. Gravity manipulators that could crush ships larger than moons. Dimensional weapons that could phase enemy vessels out of normal space. Biological weapons specifically designed to target the Devourer's organic technology. "How did you develop such advanced weapons in only 8 months?" asked Prime Calculator Yithron of the Altarians. Admiral Chen's expression remained carefully neutral. "We had help. We captured a small Devourer scout vessel 6 months ago. Our scientists have been studying their technology and biology extensively." The implications of that simple statement sent chills through the council chamber. Humans had somehow managed to capture and study one of these terrifying alien vessels, without anyone in the galaxy knowing about it. What else had they accomplished in secret? Dr. Vexnall, the old xenopsychologist who had warned about human nature from the beginning, asked the question everyone was thinking. "Admiral, what did you learn from studying these creatures?" "We learned that they are not invincible," Chen replied. "But we also learned that defeating them will require tactics and weapons that other species might consider than extreme." The first engagement between human forces and the Devourer fleet took place in the Kepler 442 system, site of humanity's agricultural colony. The colony had been evacuated weeks earlier, leaving only automated defenses and a small human military garrison. The battle was unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. 3 Devourer vessels, each the size of a small moon, entered the system and immediately began consuming the outer planets. They moved with terrifying efficiency, breaking down matter at the molecular level and absorbing it into their organic hulls. The human response was swift and brutal. Hidden weapons platforms throughout the system opened fire simultaneously. But these were not energy beams or missile barrages. They were weapons that attacked the Devourer's biological nature directly. Viral agents that disrupted cellular reproduction, quantum fields that prevented organic molecules from maintaining coherence, gravity wells that crushed the creature's flexible hulls. The largest Devourer vessel, nearly 200 kilometers long, simply dissolved under the assault. Its organic hull broke apart into component molecules that scattered harmlessly through space. The other 2 vessels attempted to retreat, but found their escape routes blocked by human ships that had somehow predicted their movements. Within 6 hours, all 3 Devourer vessels had been destroyed completely, but the victory came at a cost that horrified galactic observers. Human forces had used weapons that violated several galactic conventions on warfare. More disturbing, they had demonstrated a willingness to sacrifice entire star systems if necessary, treating planets and moons as expendable resources in the larger conflict. The footage of human soldiers dissecting still living Devourer tissue, studying it even as it writhed and attempted to escape, was broadcast across the galaxy. The images of human scientists integrating captured alien technology into their own vessels sent waves of fear through civilian populations. Ambassador Kethara watched the battle reports from her station, feeling a growing unease. Humanity was winning, but they were becoming something the galaxy did not recognize. The cheerful, curious species that had once filled communication channels with music and art was transforming into something focused entirely on warfare and survival. "They are saving us," she whispered to herself. But what will they become in the process? The answer to that question would determine not just the outcome of the war, but the future of galactic civilization itself. As reports of the first victory spread across human space, the silent colonies erupted in coordinated activity. The galaxy's monitoring stations detected massive fleet movements, the activation of weapon systems that had been hidden for months, and most ominously, the beginning of construction projects that dwarfed anything previously attempted. The war that followed would be remembered as the galaxy's darkest and most necessary hour. Within days of the first Devourer defeat, humanity revealed the true scope of their preparation. Every human colony, every research station, every merchant vessel had been part of a massive deception. While the galaxy saw normal human activity continuing, beneath the surface, humanity had been building the most sophisticated war machine in galactic history. Admiral Chen called for a full strategic meeting with all galactic military leaders. The assembly took place aboard the human flagship Determination, a vessel that defied every known principle of ship construction. It was simultaneously biological and mechanical, incorporating captured devourer technology into human engineering in ways that should have been impossible. General Thakmar, the Korvaxi Empire's greatest military mind, walked through the ship's corridors in stunned silence. The walls pulsed with organic rhythms while mechanical systems hummed with perfect efficiency. It was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. "How did you build this?" he asked Admiral Chen as they entered the main briefing room. "We learned from our enemy," she replied simply. "The Devourer's greatest strength is adaptation. They incorporate everything they consume, becoming stronger with each victory. We decided to adopt the same approach." The briefing that followed shattered every assumption about human capabilities. In 8 months, humanity had not only studied Devourer technology, but had improved upon it. They had created hybrid vessels that combined organic adaptation with mechanical precision. They had developed weapons that could think and evolve in real time. Most remarkably, they had learned to fight like their enemy while maintaining their own identity. "The Devourers are not just a military force," Admiral Chen explained to the assembled commanders. "They are a way of thinking, a philosophy of existence based on consumption and growth. To defeat them, we had to understand that philosophy and find ways to turn it against itself." The human strategy was unlike anything in galactic military history. Instead of trying to destroy the Devourer fleet through conventional warfare, they planned to use the aliens' own adaptive nature against them. They would feed the Devourers false information, trick them into adapting in harmful ways, and ultimately cause them to destroy themselves through their own evolutionary processes. But the strategy required unprecedented cooperation from all galactic species, and absolute trust in human leadership. "We need every species to contribute their unique capabilities," Chen continued. "Korvaxi warriors will provide ground assault capabilities. Nexari shields will protect our installations. Altarian computational power will run our tactical systems. But understand this. You will be following human orders without question or debate. There will be no time for committee meetings or diplomatic negotiations." Some representatives shifted uncomfortably at this demand, but they had seen what happened to the first Devourer vessels that encountered human defenses. Whatever humanity had become during their months of silence, they were effective. The next phase of the war began with coordinated attacks on 17 Devourer vessels simultaneously. Human fleets, supported by Allied forces, struck across a front spanning thousands of light years. But these were not conventional battles. They were elaborate traps designed to capture rather than destroy. Captain Zektor of the Nexari Exploration Fleet found himself commanding a hybrid human Nexari vessel in one such operation. The ship's organic components could camouflage it as a damaged Devourer vessel, while its mechanical systems provided the firepower needed for the mission. "This feels wrong," he confided to his human liaison, Lieutenant Commander Sarah Park. "We are using their own technology against them. Are we becoming like them?" Lieutenant Commander Park's response was cold and practical. "If becoming like them is what it takes to save every living being in this galaxy, then yes, we will become whatever we need to become." The capture operations were successful beyond expectations. Human forces managed to take 7 intact Devourer vessels, along with hundreds of specimens of their biological technology. But the real breakthrough came when human scientists discovered something that changed everything. The Devourers were not naturally occurring life forms. They were weapons. Dr. Elizabeth Warren, humanity's leading xenobiologist, made the discovery while examining captured specimens aboard a secret research facility hidden in the asteroid belt of the Sol system. The facility itself was a marvel of human engineering, a massive complex built into a hollowed-out asteroid, completely invisible to outside sensors. "The Devourers show clear signs of artificial genetic manipulation," she reported to Admiral Chen via encrypted transmission. "Someone or something created them as living weapons designed for galactic sterilization. But whoever made them lost control long ago. They have been consuming everything in their path for thousands of years." The implications were staggering. Somewhere in the void between galaxies, an unknown civilization had created the ultimate weapon and then been destroyed by their own creation. The Devourers were continuing their mission of consumption, not out of intelligence or malice, but because it was literally the only thing they had been designed to do. This discovery led to humanity's most controversial decision of the war. If the Devourers could be reprogrammed, they could be turned against themselves. But the process would require human scientists to merge their consciousness directly with Devourer biological systems. It would mean voluntarily becoming part of the enemy in order to control them. The Galactic Council was horrified when Admiral Chen presented this plan. "You are talking about voluntary infection with alien biological agents," protested Ambassador Cathara. "This could transform your entire species into something inhuman." "We are already becoming something inhuman," Admiral Chen replied calmly. "The question is whether we become something that saves the galaxy or something that fails to protect it." The vote was close, but ultimately the Council approved the plan. The alternative, continued conventional warfare against an enemy that adapted to every strategy, would likely result in galactic extinction. 50 human volunteers underwent the procedure. They were the best and brightest of humanity's scientific and military elite, individuals who chose to sacrifice their human identity for the chance to end the war. The process took place aboard the research facility in Sol's asteroid belt, under the most secure conditions possible. Dr. Warren oversaw the procedure personally. Each volunteer was connected to living Devourer tissue through advanced neural interfaces. Their consciousness merged with alien biological systems, allowing them to understand and control Devourer technology from within. The results were immediate and terrifying. The volunteers could control captured Devourer vessels directly through thought alone. They could communicate with the alien technology, reprogram its basic functions, and most importantly, they could send false evolutionary signals to the main Devourer fleet. But the cost was visible in their changed appearance and behavior. The volunteers retained their human memories and personalities, but their bodies began to incorporate biological elements from the Devourer technology. They became hybrid beings, part human, part alien, and completely committed to winning the war at any cost. Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Webb, the first successful volunteer, reported his status to Admiral Chen with a voice that carried harmonics no human throat could produce. "The integration is complete, Admiral. I can feel their network, their collective consciousness. They are not evil. They are simply programmed, and programs can be changed." The final phase of the war began with a coordinated assault on the main Devourer fleet. But instead of trying to destroy the enemy, human-controlled Devourer vessels infiltrated the alien formation and began spreading a viral reprogramming sequence throughout their biological network. The process took weeks to complete, during which the galaxy watched in fascination and horror as the mighty Devourer fleet began to turn against itself. Vessels that had consumed entire star systems suddenly stopped their advance and began attacking each other. The alien fleet tore itself apart in a feeding frenzy that consumed 90% of their forces. The remaining Devourer vessels, now under human control, were directed to consume the debris of their former fleet. Within days, thousands of vessels had been reduced to a handful of human-controlled bioships. The war was over, but the victory had come at a price that would haunt the galaxy for generations. Humanity had saved galactic civilization, but they had fundamentally changed in the process. The 50 volunteers who had merged with alien technology were no longer fully human. The human military forces who had spent months fighting alongside living weapons had adopted tactics and philosophies that disturbed their former allies. Most troubling of all, humanity had demonstrated a willingness to become whatever was necessary to protect the galaxy, even if it meant sacrificing their own nature in the process. "Admiral," Chen's final transmission to the Galactic Council was brief and ominous. "The immediate threat has been neutralized, but our deep space monitors have detected 17 other potential extinction-level threats approaching from different directions. We will be ready for them. The galaxy was safe, but it would never again be the same." 2 years after the end of the Devourer War, the galaxy had settled into an uneasy peace that no one quite understood. Ambassador Cathara stood in her office aboard Station Prime, looking out at a view that would have been impossible before the war. Human vessels moved through space in perfect silence, their hybrid biological-mechanical hull shifting and adapting as they traveled. They were beautiful in an alien way, but they reminded everyone that humanity was no longer the species the galaxy had once known. The war's end had brought revelations that shattered comfortable assumptions about galactic civilization. Admiral Chen's promise of 17 other extinction-level threats had proven accurate. Human deep space monitoring systems enhanced with Devourer technology had detected them all. The Void Runners, mechanical entities that consumed planets for raw materials. The Mind Plague, a psychic virus that turned entire species into zombie-like slaves. The Star Eaters, creatures that literally consumed solar energy, leaving dead systems in their wake. Each threat was different, but all were moving toward the galaxy from the empty space between star clusters. Humanity had shared this information with the Galactic Council, but their solution was typically human in its directness and brutality. "We will intercept and neutralize each threat before it reaches inhabited space," Admiral Chen had announced, "but we will do so using methods that other species might find disturbing. We recommend that galactic civilization continue its normal activities while we handle these problems." It was a polite way of saying that humanity would become the galaxy's silent guardians, protecting everyone else from threats they could not imagine or understand. The transformation was already well underway. Human colonies throughout the galaxy had been converted into military installations disguised as normal settlements. Human civilians, when they could be found, spoke in brief, efficient sentences and seemed focused on tasks that other species could not understand. Human children were being educated in subjects that included xenobiology, military strategy, and something called existential threat assessment. Most disturbing of all, humanity had begun what they called voluntary enhancement programs. Citizens could choose to undergo biological modifications that would make them more effective at defending galactic civilization. The modifications were based on captured technology from various alien threats, integrated with human biology in ways that produced beings who were recognizably human but fundamentally changed. Dr. Vexnell, now in the final years of her long life, published her last research paper on human evolution. Her findings were both fascinating and terrifying. "Humanity is undergoing guided evolution at a rate that should be impossible," she wrote. "They are becoming a species specifically adapted for warfare against existential threats. But they are doing so while maintaining their core identity and values. They remain recognizably human, but they are becoming something more than human as well." The galaxy's reaction to humanity's transformation was mixed. Most species were grateful to be protected from threats they could never have faced alone. Trade continued, diplomacy functioned, and daily life proceeded much as it always had for the 46 non-human species. But everyone knew that humanity was watching. Captain Zector, now promoted to admiral after his service in the war, commanded a joint patrol fleet in the Outer Rim. His ships regularly encountered human vessels on missions that were never fully explained. The humans were polite and professional, but they made it clear that certain areas of space were now under their exclusive jurisdiction. "What are they doing out there?" he asked his science officer, a young Nexari named Plix whose scales showed constant anxiety patterns. "According to our sensors, they are building something," Plix reported. "Multiple construction sites in deep space, but the energy signatures are unlike anything in our databases. Whatever they are building, it is not designed for normal galactic use." The construction projects were just one sign of humanity's new role. Human exploration fleets had begun venturing far beyond the galaxy's edge, establishing monitoring stations and defensive positions in the void between star clusters. They were preparing for wars that might not come for decades or centuries, but they were preparing nonetheless. The most visible change was in how other species interacted with humans. The easy friendship and casual communication of pre-war years had been replaced by careful respect and underlying fear. Humans were no longer peers in galactic civilization. They were protectors, guardians, and potentially something more dangerous. General Thokmar, despite his warrior pride, found himself genuinely intimidated by his human counterparts. During a joint military exercise, he had watched human soldiers demonstrate capabilities that bordered on the supernatural. They could survive in vacuum without life support, communicate through biological networks that connected their minds, and adapt to combat situations in real time. "They are becoming gods of war," he confided to his aide after the exercise, "but they are still human enough to choose to protect us rather than conquer us. I pray that never changes." The prayer was more relevant than he knew. In the depths of space, at a coordinates known only to the highest levels of human military command, Admiral Chen stood aboard the command vessel. Evolution. The ship was no longer recognizably human technology. It was something new. A fusion of human engineering, devourer biotechnology, and systems captured from 3 other extinct civilizations. Around her, the 50 volunteers who had first merged with alien technology continued their transformation. They were still human in their thoughts and loyalties, but their bodies had adapted far beyond baseline humanity. They could survive in any environment, process information at superhuman rates, and most importantly, they could interface directly with the alien threats that continued to approach the galaxy. Status report on the approaching mind plague, Admiral Chen requested. Lieutenant Colonel Webb, now more biological machine than human in appearance, responded without moving his lips. His voice came directly through the ship's communication system. Interception in 14 months, 7 days. Countermeasures are ready. The psychic virus will be contained and neutralized before it reaches the galactic rim. And the Star Eaters? 37 months until contact. We have developed stellar manipulation technology that will redirect them toward empty space. No inhabited systems will be threatened. It was a routine briefing about threats that would have terrified any other species. But for humanity's evolved defenders, they were simply problems to be solved with the appropriate application of advanced technology and strategic thinking. The conversation was interrupted by an alert from deep space sensors. Another threat had been detected, this one unlike anything they had encountered before. Analysis, Admiral Chen asked. The sensor data painted a picture of something that defied classification. It was artificial but alive, mechanical but organic, and it was moving toward the galaxy with purpose and intelligence. It appears to be a single entity the size of a small moon, reported the enhanced human monitoring the sensors. But it is not like the previous threats. This one is trying to communicate. The entity's first message was simple and direct. I seek the species that defeated the Harvest Fleet. I have a proposition. Admiral Chen felt a chill of recognition. The Harvest Fleet. That was what the Devourers called themselves in their own biological programming. Somehow this new entity knew about humanity's victory over them. Open a communication channel, she ordered, but maintain full defensive readiness. The entity's response came immediately. I am the architect. I created the Harvest Fleet and 17 other bioweapons to cleanse this galaxy of unworthy life. You have proven worthy by defeating my creations. I offer alliance. The implications hit Admiral Chen like a physical blow. The unknown civilization that had created the Devourers was not extinct. It was still out there, still watching, and now it wanted to make contact with humanity. But the architect's next message was even more disturbing. Your species shows potential for transcendence. Join with me, and together we will cleanse the universe of inferior forms. The remaining bioweapons are still approaching your galaxy. Only alliance with me can stop them. For the first time since the war began, Admiral Chen felt genuine fear. Not fear of death or defeat, but fear of what humanity might become if they accepted such an alliance. She made the decision that would define humanity's future role in the galaxy. Negative. Humanity does not cleanse the universe of any life forms. We protect all life regardless of its capabilities or origins. The architect's response was immediate and ominous. Then you have chosen to face my remaining weapons. Some are beyond your current ability to defeat. When your species is ready to embrace transcendence, contact me. Until then, survive if you can. The entity vanished from sensors, leaving humanity to face the approaching threats alone. Admiral Chen turned to her enhanced crew members. Begin immediate preparations for advanced defensive systems. If we cannot accept alliance with our enemy, then we must become strong enough to face whatever they send against us. She opened a communication channel to the Galactic Council. For the first time in 2 years, she would break the silence that humanity had maintained since the war's end.